Welcome back to Mind Your Biz. My name is Seth, and today's creator highlight episode, we're changing the conversation just a little bit. We're going a little more political than maybe you've seen me do in the past, but this is long overdue. And it's with an individual who I met in South Florida who just struck me as being so professional, so put together, so intensely focused on some of the real problems that cryptocurrency is facing right now from a regulatory perspective that I had to have him on the show. Today, joining me is Sam Arms, the president and founder of the FBBA. Sam, welcome to Mind Your Biz.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show. Great to be here.
For the audience that doesn't know you, who is Sam in a nutshell?
Yeah, so I run everything that has to do with Web3 on the political world here in the state of Florida. So I started one of the first state advocacy organizations for Web3 and Bitcoin, and it's now become and made what Florida is today. So I've been doing that for 5 years. So I'm connected with all the big Florida politicians, the governor, the mayor of Miami, all that fun stuff. And we just push and pass legislation, not only on the state side, but of course at the federal level, and also trying to get our cities and localities involved as well. So anything political strategy here in Florida, which I'm now also helping advise other people outside of Florida and even outside of the country on political strategy, that's what I do.
Clearly, you saw that there were global problems that were affecting crypto or that might threaten to hamper its growth. And you decided I need to really narrow down my focus and start in some place where I can actually affect change, actually make some changes. What was the starting point like for you there?
I come from a political family, not that they're politically involved, but around the dinner table, politics was always a conversation of discussion between my mom and my dad. And so that kind of got imbued in me as a kid. And so when I went through university, I did all kinds of political stuff, but I also did a lot of interesting things. Like I was educating USS SOCOM out of MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, United States Special Operations Command, on Bitcoin and counter-threat finance in 2016. And that was kind of my professional breakout moments where I was like, okay, this stuff is awesome. I really enjoy this. What else can I do? I somehow ended up at the State Department in DC, and then I came back to Florida. I even got sent over to Jerusalem. I was learning Arabic. I was doing all kinds of fun stuff. But I wanted to stay in Florida. I love Florida. I love the sun. I love the water. I'm definitely like your Florida man, so to speak. And I wanted to get involved in the political process. So I went to Tallahassee. I did some work in the legislature. I worked for a lobbying firm. But in 2017, you have to remember, when I first started my association, we were not only early in the industry. That was the first ICO boom. It's when we go from 1,000 to 20,000, I think, or 19,999, whatever the number was. And Florida was not the hub that it was yet. So I saw what could happen, which was Florida becoming a hub, industry moving here, and the politicians not understanding what the heck is going on. And so even though we were early, we set up all this infrastructure to the point where now Florida is, I think, the leading state in the United States for the Web3 industry.
No argument there at all. I think that's become very obvious from the promotional and marketing side as well, that when events are announced for other areas, a lot of us get a lot less enthusiastic, stateside anyway, even an international, right? I mean, being invited to go to Brazil or Philippines is much more attractive in most cases than staying here. And it shouldn't be that way, right? As a red-blooded American, I want the states to fight for our business. And it became very obvious that the work you're doing in Florida is paying off, and they are fighting for business. They are fighting to bring in the most attractive businesses, some of the brightest and the best. Yeah. And in my opinion, it's stopped being a battle between California and New York. It is becoming a battle between Texas and Florida, in large part because of your work. So well done. It's obvious from the outside, from a knuckle dragger like me that works in marketing. So yeah, when we see that evidence, then clearly all that work you've put in is paying off. But let's jump back a little bit. You mentioned with SOCOM doing the anti-terrorism, being able to travel internationally, and having blockchain be the frame the entire time. Was it all blockchain that entire time, or was there more to it?
It really depends. So, for example, when I was in Jerusalem, I was there to learn Arabic, understand the culture. And I was really thinking about becoming a foreign service agent with the goal of being a diplomat. But I loved the Middle East. I love Arabic culture. I love Persian culture. To this day, I still do. And so I loved my experience over there. But then I thought, okay, is this really what you want to do? And I was like, no, I don't. I don't want to spend time over there. And even while I was over there, it was a chaotic period. Now it's even more so. It's just a different world. It's a different mindset. When you go and you work in government, it's not a meritocracy. You have to go in. They're like, you wait your 20 years. And once you hit your 20-year mark, then we'll start looking at, you can slowly work your way up the ladder. And I hated that. I hated that culture, even though I was passionate about a lot of the missions. So I came back home, came back to Florida. And I loved at the time Bitcoin, blockchain, Web3, because what I saw was a geopolitical tool that was going to affect everything. A lot of people view it, and rightfully so, as a financial product, right? Different tokens that can create generational wealth. But just given my mindset, I was thinking, okay, well, how's this going to affect national security? How's this going to affect the way America is going to pursue different ventures around the globe? How's it going to affect the US dollar system when we're sanctioning countries? So that was my mindset. I was like, this is a geopolitical tool that I find fascinating. And I want to make sure that any companies developing what I consider freedom technology come to Florida, because I have a great network in Florida. I don't want to leave the state, even though I travel a lot. I just love it being my home base. So I want those people to come to me. And that's kind of one of my biggest missions. And that's really what's happened. And so now Florida and Texas, like you said, which by the way is great because I am very friendly with my Texas counterparts. We actually help each other a ton. I just got back from Dallas a couple of weeks ago from a big conference there hosted by my partners in Texas. But I want people to come to Florida, right? And so that's been my goal. And I think we've succeeded really well at that. So now it's all about what else can I do to push the envelope further? The more people we have here, the more companies, the more money, the more political power. So how can we use Florida as an example to not only lead the rest of the country, but let's actually look at legislation that is preparing us for an SEC that doesn't like our community, possibly a federal government that doesn't like our community. Like, how do we set up a defensive barrier and use a state as a way to say, no, we're not just going to sit down and take it. Like, we want these companies here, and we want to make sure that somewhere they feel safe.
Sure. So again, kudos for the efforts put in so far. And I'm not shocked that there's that level of cooperation between the two states, which apparently California and New York have lacked for many decades. I don't know what it would take to reconcile those differences or the problems between those two states. But frankly, I stopped paying taxes in California well over 10 years ago, so I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
congratulations. I know.
They reelected Jerry Brown, and my wife and I were like, what the hell is this state on? Like, this guy almost bankrupted the state however many years ago. You reelected him? And I agree that cryptocurrency, while people see an inherently financial tool, the geopolitics of the thing, you go back far enough with finance here in the United States, it's obviously political. Alexander Hamilton, Andrew Jackson, right? Very different ideas about how finance should be run in this country. And that hasn't quit in 200 years. It hasn't quit. We've just been still trying to figure out what's the best way to deal with either sound money or flexible money, right? Where derivatives can be used in order to build commerce here and protect our interests. And it's just been this nonstop battle. More recently, Ron Paul and the case for gold and all that. And so, yeah, this is just the next evolution of that debate, I think. With you on this path of helping to bring more business to Florida, helping it to become the most attractive and fertile ground, plant crypto seeds, if you will, for business and just the way of life, right? People who might want to use crypto in their daily life. What was the point of no return for you in saying, crypto is just part of my life forever now, and it's got to be Florida? Was maybe a big milestone or a big turning point for you that made that a reality after that previous career?
It's interesting because technically, when I think about it, because I'm so young, I'm one of the few people that I think this has been my entire career. So even when I was doing work and researching and educating USSOCOM, and I had some prior work before that, but nothing special at all, I think that was really the mile marker. And that was really when I upped my professional game and started taking this far more seriously. Because I said, oh, there's something there. I did a deep dive. And I was looking into, is ISIS going to use this stuff, which was big at the time? Are drug cartels going to be using this stuff? If so, how? What's the game theory behind it? And so then once you take those principles and you learn, like, how does game theory operate? How do incentives operate it? Which is great because that's what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is a giant game theory project, right? It's a giant economic game theory project. You can apply that to anything, and nothing represents game theory better than politics as well. Human interaction, why people do what they do, and the interactions that they have. So for me, it was just like, this is too fun to not do, right? It's definitely just up my alley because I've always loved the political world, but I'm not like a government guy in the sense that I don't want to work for government because it's too slow and too boring. So it married my love of the private sector, of technology, but then also being politically involved. And so it made it so that I could do everything that I wanted to do all in one. I get to travel, I can still go to the beach, I can still go water skiing, all while being politically influential. And so it's just too much fun, I think. And I don't see it getting any less fun because, as you're well aware, politics doesn't stop. it just keeps going forever and gets more intense. And to your point, money in politics in a multiple of ways is probably one of the most important deciding factors of anything. And so being at the intersection of that, I always tell people I'm in crypto and politics. So I'm in like the dirtiest world ever, right? Because the crypto world has all its scams and all its ICO and all its dirty stuff. And then I marry that with politics, which is just as dirty. So I'm like, yeah, gee, the stuff that I see all the time, and then just trying to wade through it all. It's hard, but it's not impossible.
Sure, sure. Well, if you had chosen to relocate to Chicago to start this career, I'd be worried about you. But no, I know. I'm allowed to take political cheap shots on the show. I don't know if Sam is, but yeah, I'd be worried about you if there are some other areas where you chose to set up shop because of their history with politics and crime and whatever else. Yeah. So
actually, by the way, Al Capone had a getaway house in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's one of the few houses that actually has a giant watchtower at the top of it, so you could see if anybody was coming. So we've got some of that. We've got some Chicago connections here.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, no, that tracks for sure. Let's talk about some big wins that you had so far on the path. And I want to be respectful of your time, so we'll tighten up the rest of this interview. But some big wins that you've had since deciding, okay, this is the path I'm going to take. How do I attract business? How do I attract commerce? How do I attract the biggest movers and shakers in crypto to my state, to me? How do I attract some of the biggest politically active people, right? Whether they are people in office right now, or upcoming candidates, or former governors, or whoever it is that's in that social graph. What have been some big wins that for you added some momentum to the direction that you chose?
I think probably our biggest win so far is our anti-central bank digital currency bill, which Florida was the first to pass. That was by far our biggest win. It was probably the most influential win that affected not only what other states are doing, but affected the presidential debate, the presidential conversation, made central bank digital currencies mainstream and a debatable topic. For us, that was a huge win. Getting that bill passed made people love Florida even more than they already love it now. And that's the kind of momentum that we wanted to see. And so just furthering on that momentum and ensuring that Florida really is a place for freedom technology, but we also want to be financially independent. So like talking about gold and Ron Paul earlier, one of our bills this year is saying that digital gold should be specie, should be legal tender here in the state of Florida. And normal gold and silver should not have to be minted by the Fed to be legal tender as well. So what does that mean? It means that we're no longer relying on the Fed through just the US dollar system. We have alternatives. And if you can follow the logic, if digital gold is legal tender in the state of Florida, what other commodities that are digital could become legal tender down the line, right? So the hardest part about politics is definitely we have our mile markers and we have our wins, but the job is never done. It's always about, I need to get to my next win. Because you always feel like time is of the essence, because you only have so much time before the country goes to hell or worse things happen. So your mission is, well, how can I make sure that the people in my state are able to live freely? So that's always top of mind, and building coalitions around that. So the anti-CBDC bill was a huge accomplishment for us. Other than that, we have very small things, of course, local to Florida. Miami becoming the hub that it is was a big accomplishment, and something that obviously Mayor Suarez was a huge driver of. Every time there's a company that relocates here, we consider that a win. Kathy Wood setting up shop is a huge deal. She actually just went to St. Pete. A lot of it's silent money. We have a lot of whales that move down here. We have a lot of companies that kind of secretly move down here and then bring a lot of their staff. There's wins every day. The communities continue to grow. I organize and help promote all the meetups, all the Web3 Bitcoin meetups around the state. And they're always telling me, here's more companies that are coming our way. Here's more people. We've grown 30%, 40%. Those are all wins. And you're not going to see those wins televised. They're not the big name wins, but they're the wins that matter politically and for adoption and for growth.
That makes sense. I know just within the marketing and promotional sphere of crypto, there are a couple of notable crypto influencers who tried the Puerto Rico tax exemption for a while, and they tapped out. They said, you know what, I'm too used to some of the amenities of being in the mainland. And they, of course, relocated where? Back to Florida. They didn't go somewhere else from Puerto Rico. They decided, okay, the protectorate didn't work out for me. I'm going to go to the real deal, one of the states. And
they're only there 6 months in that one day. The rest of the time, they're in some part of Florida, whether it be Miami or Tampa.
I personally know one guy who's deathly afraid of flying. So he tried to stick it out for the full year and was just like, I can't do this. Like, I'm going stir crazy. Upcoming fires that you have to put out, or upcoming dates for things that you set to pop off. If you can let us in on some stuff that you're excited about, we'd love to know.
So Florida's political session this year for 2024 is January and February. So I've got 4 bills up that I'm trying to push, that I'm trying to get passed. We have our blockchain Web3 Day at the Capitol, which is we host every year at the Capitol. We bring companies and people up to talk to legislators, the governor's office, the CFO's office, to educate them, to try to promote our legislation. So that's kind of my biggest focuses in the next month. Other than that, it's always, there's multiple conferences around the state trying to get politicians involved. We have a lot of powerful congressmen here in Florida. Our senators are very powerful. So as that kind of continues on, making sure that they're educated, that they're a part of the plan, looking forward to who's our next governor going to be after DeSantis leaves, making sure that they're Bitcoin and Web3 friendly, trying to get where the water is shifting on that way, getting ready for the 2024 elections and how that'll affect us. We help raise money for candidates who are pro-crypto. We put them on a list. We try to encourage people that, hey, this is who you should be voting for if this is an industry that you want to be a part of. So just ensuring all those things are complete, making sure that those politicians are living up to the asks that we give them, that's my goal.
So when the U.S. Treasury put Tornado Cash on the OFAC list, on the blacklist, Vitalic Buterin came out and said, hey, I just used that tech to make sure that I could make a donation to Ukraine. I think he used privacy tech on Ethereum for probably its highest and best purpose, which is political donation without doxing the individual who gave that donation. Yep. Cryptocurrency is uniquely suited to do that. As political reprisal in other states is a huge problem with donor lists going to the wind and then people being targeted socially. And so I think what Vitalik laid out there is great. If I live in a territory that is not the United States, where I will not violate federal law, should I be encouraged to do the same, but donating for some of these candidates?
That's a tough question because campaign finance is one of the most heavily regulated areas in the United States and in any country. And a lot of candidates are very strict because that can throw out your election. It's a hit piece in the waiting. We try to get a lot of candidates to accept Bitcoin. Vivek is accepting Bitcoin. RFK is accepting Bitcoin. Ron DeSantis is accepting Bitcoin. There's ways to do it, but you still have to be careful. You have to make sure, okay, is this from an outside entity? Is it from a United States citizen? Because the reporting requirements are different. Is it to a PAC? Is it to a super PAC? They're more concerned about making sure that they follow those regulatory guidelines because even though, yes, it's freedom tech, but if you're trying to anonymously donate to an individual you really love, unfortunately, that individual who's running for office is still bound by the laws of the land. They may not be able to accept it, right? And so it's one of those bifurcations, one of those things that are at odds of each other because you want to support these people, but you're right. There's always an issue when you're putting your name on the line. So I think that's never going to go away. I think just the nature of the beast, the nature of the political system, and the nature of freedom tech, those things are always going to be at odds. And it's up to the individual to try to negotiate or figure out what's really worth it for them.
Okay, got it. So if I have that situation as laid out before where I'm in a territory that I'm not violating federal law and I want to donate, I should do that to Gavin Newsom. Got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right. Okay.
There you go.
Fair. Okay, we're on the same page. This has been an amazing chat. I've taken you longer than I said I would because it's been so engaging and I love hearing about the work that you're doing. It was a pleasure meeting you in person in South Florida. Really, I can say to the audience that everything you presented right now, the person that you purport to be is exactly who the hell you are in real life. So absolutely love that about you. Like you said, you didn't go the other route where you would have had to kowtow to get promotions, whatever else, and wait multi decades to finally start having this impact. So love that you're that go-getter. As far as places where people can contact you, I got the website up right here, but is there any other place that you'd like people to reach out, engage, and contribute?
Yeah, you can go on my Twitter. It's just Samuel Arms. My YouTube is Samuel Arms. I go everything just by my name, my full name. You can reach out through our website. I'm pretty good at responding, especially on Twitter. Of course, I have a TikTok and Instagram and all that fun stuff too.
Okay. Hey, you can't not have that stuff. Unfortunately, right? I think Trump tried to warn us, but you can't not have that stuff. Social media matters. So I guess use an old phone that's you keep in a Faraday bag most of the time. Whatever.
Yeah.
We can go down the right. Yeah, we can go down the privacy route another time. Clearly, you speak the language there, so maybe we do a follow-up if there's time. But really appreciate you today, Sam. This has been so enlightening. Getting to hear your backstory, getting to hear what you're working on. I can't wait to see what's happening in 2024. Sounds like the best is yet to come for you. Anything else you want to say to the Mind Your Biz audience before we wrap up?
No, just honestly, stay politically active and involved. Even if it's not your forte, it's good to just be informed what's going on.
Awesome. Appreciate you again. And Mind Your Biz community, go follow all of Sam's socials. Be supportive. Reach out. If you're in Florida, good grief. go lend a hand, right? Really, like, go lend a hand. Put in some sweat. Make sure this man's mission is not that he's not doing this alone, because really all of us are going to benefit from any state popping up as the leader. That becomes the light on the hill. Everybody else gets to follow. But again, follow all of his socials. Remember to stay private and mind your biz.